Thank you, Bill. And thank you, everybody, for dropping by to join us on another edition of Eavesdropping from wherever you join us across the breadth and scope of this great nation, parts of Canada and parts of Mexico. And tonight we get a chance to eavesdrop with John David. John is a man who has built a career helping people survive reputational crises, and then he decided to write one of his own. He's a longtime public relations and crisis communications consultant, a corporate ghostwriter, and the author of the nonfiction book, How to Protect or Destroy Your Reputation Online. For years, he has worked behind the scenes shaping narratives and managing fallout in high-pressure moments. And last year, he stepped into the spotlight with his debut novel, The Bystander. It's a mystery with thriller elements that follows a television reporter whose career takes off after he captures an active shooter incident on camera, only to discover his story is far more complicated than it first appears. The novel won the Page Turner Award for Mysteries, was named one of the best thrillers of 2025, and earned recognition from multiple literary award programs. He's a member of the International Thrillers Writer's Debut author program, and though he says he's not much of a joiner. John also enjoys fishing, we'll talk about that, talking politics, and following the Florida Gators. He joins us from Pinecrest, Florida. John, welcome to Eavesdropping.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. That was it's a great intro. Sounds like an interesting guest. Hopefully I can fill those shoes.
I'm sure you will. Well, the first thing I have to start with is the University of Florida. You're a true fan, as am I.
Oh, absolutely. No, I graduated from the University of Florida back in 1990, and it kind of gets in your blood. And so I'm a Gator through and through, and I've. We were chatting a little bit before we started, and so you have a sense of history. So I was at the University of Florida when we were like really bad, like in football. So, but I did get to see Emmitt Smith for 3 years, and then the real glory days started after I graduated. I'm from a family of Gators. My brothers both went to the University of Florida. My wife went to the University of Florida, and both of my kids went to the University of Florida. So we're Gators big time.
Yeah, good in-state tuition rates as well.
Yep.
So is the new coach coming in from Tulane going to turn it around?
Gosh, I hope so. I really hope so. We've been waiting for a while for somebody to turn it around. We got some licks here over the past few years. My philosophy when it comes to the new coach, and unfortunately, I've had to employ this philosophy several times, which I don't like. I don't like having a new coach so much. Is listen, if we can next year, if we're competitive, and if we can like ruin one of our rivals' years, right? If we can like ruin Georgia's year, or we can make Tennessee miserable, or we can like knock Florida State off or something at the end of the season and ruin their chances, and they don't do anything really embarrassing, then it'll be a good year. That's where I go when in the transitional period, and then the pressure cooker really starts after the first year.
We really need to beat Miami, but I guess we should move on so that other people can enjoy the conversation. You started out as a crisis manager. How does that start? That's intriguing to me.
Well, it's sort of that's what I've been doing recently in my career. I started off as a publicist. I went to journalism school at UF, and I studied public relations, got a bachelor's degree in public relations from the University of Florida, and then I went and worked in PR agencies for a long time, for many years, and then I went out on my own, and I would start to deal with, as you get more experience, you get closer relationships with your clients, and then you start to get, when things go wrong, they call you and say, well, what do we do? And that's kind of how it starts. And that's, so my career's kind of evolved, that I've started doing more crisis work because I just had more experience and more understanding, and clients who trust my judgment. And what ends up happening is you just get calls from folks, and things are happening and they don't know what to do. The media is knocking on their door. What do we do? There's coverage online that we don't understand. What do we do? Do we talk? Do we not talk? What do we say? What don't we say? And that's really at the core of it. It's messaging, and then kind of understanding the rules of engagement on different platforms. And so how you respond online compared to how you respond to, a television reporter who's, got a camera and a microphone versus, a classical print reporter. I would call them like somebody who works for, a newspaper. I'm not sure we have newspapers anymore, but media outlet, and how they think. And so just understanding how to respond to these different situations, when to talk, what to say, when not to talk, when to clam up, when to just take your hit and move on.
Well, how do you know when it's gotten so bad that you need to have a crisis consultant?
Typically, if you don't know what to say and you're nervous, right? So in other words, if you just as like you shouldn't go into court, without a lawyer. I don't think you should, if you're if it's a high pressure situation, I wouldn't talk to a television reporter without a consultant who has experience, who understands the rules of engagement, and more importantly, honestly, can act as the go-between. And so if somebody calls you up and wants to talk to you about your business, and they're saying they're accusing you of stuff, it's much better for you to call someone like me, and I can get in between and kind of triage the situation. And so you don't have to answer directly. We can then figure out what's the best way we want to answer these questions. Maybe we want to answer them in writing, or maybe we want to go on camera, or maybe we just want to say, guess what? Private company, none of your business, right? So it's having that person when you're in a situation where there's a potential for real reputational damage. I think that's when you need to have help.
And is it the same formula for a person as it would be for a company?
I think so. I mean, typically companies have more at stake and have greater resources. But yeah, I mean, I deal with plenty of individuals who have concerns and problems, and they need to figure out what they're going to do. There's lots of unfortunately, there's people who've gotten themselves in trouble, not necessarily criminal things, but just like reputational things. They kind of have a moment where they lose their mind temporarily, and someone films it and puts it online, that kind of stuff. I've done lots of things like that.
Do you ever have to, or ever had in the past, to help with crisis management for the kids of someone?
Not specifically for the kids of someone, although I did. So I wrote a book, which you mentioned before, about online reputation issues.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of the comments that I got was, I'm like giving this to my kids. I'm giving this book to my kids. And I talk a lot about that because, when you're young, you think you're indestructible, and particularly, you're learning the rules of the road. And sometimes people they share too much online, get involved too much. They put themselves in a bad situation. They take, they say the wrong things. They take pictures of the wrong things, if you catch my drift.
And send pictures of the wrong thing too.
Yeah. I mean, that was my, I used to, after I wrote my online reputation book, I spoke about that issue like all over the country. I did conferences in California, New York, Chicago, and I would always say, kind of one of my closing remarks was always, stop taking pictures of your private parts, And it's twofold. It's number one is stop taking pictures of your private parts, and stop asking people for that. So it's like, there's, for every time you hear of for example, a female sending a picture to her boyfriend, there's a boyfriend who asked for it. And so like, the traffic goes both ways. It's not just, a one way thing. And so that's always been it's young people. They have a real propensity to get themselves into trouble, online, unfortunately.
Would you say that crisis management is something that's fun, or is it stressful, or is it both?
For me, it's not, I most of my clients have been with me for a long time. And so I wouldn't call it fun. It's business, and it's important. But it's interesting, it's interesting. It's intense. It can be really high stakes, and you're dealing with typically, you're to like upper management of a company, the people who run a business, the people who've built it from the ground up. And they're the ones who have the most at stake. Yeah. So it's interesting, and it can be really intense. I'm not sure I would call it fun, but the days move quick. When you're when you're
Yeah.
dealing with a PR crisis, the days move fast, and so that part of it, and it's challenging. But a lot of what helps me is that I've had a lot of experience, and so I don't get as emotional as I probably did when I was younger. I'm more kind of here are the stakes, and more like oftentimes kind of where lawyers sort of fall on the spectrum. You bring a problem to your attorney, and they say, well, you can do X, you can do Y, and they say, which one should I do? And you say, well, here are the benefits of X, here are the benefits of Y, and then they say, which one should you do? Well, they say, here's the benefits of X and Y. They give you it's your decision. You're the business person, and the same thing what happens in PR and communications when you get into a high stress situation is you say, listen, here's we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but we can do X or we can do Y. And I'm going to explain to you what would happen, what I think the upside and the downside is. And then, if they ask me like, okay, if it was your company, your money, what would you do? And I tell them.
Have you ever had a client who just wouldn't follow your advice and it went exactly the way you told them it would? That's got to be
Absolutely.
frustrating.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I've had clients, who haven't listened to me, and they've ended up regretting it, unfortunately. So I will leave it at that. I will leave it at that.
We'll take your advice on that, especially on the online stuff. So what drove you then to go into the arena of fiction and write the bystander?
It was actually a couple of things. I think the overarching thing is that I was, before I got married and had kids, I used to read a lot of fiction. And then I wasn't really like a book a week guy, but I was probably a couple of books a month guy. I read lots of thrillers and lots of mysteries and all kinds of stuff. And then I met my wife, I got married, I had kids, and something's got to give. There's just not as much time. And my joke is, my golf game went to crap, and I stopped reading novels because I just didn't have time. And so, but then when my kids went away to college, I kind of like rediscovered novels. I kind of found a little bit more time, and I would actually like start listening to audiobooks when I was exercising in the morning. And I really kind of fell in love again with the mystery thriller genre. And I've always been a writer. So, I mean, I went to journalism school, you're right. And PR, you're right. Even, crisis communications, you're right. You write message points. So I've always been a writer, and never wrote any fiction. But then I had this idea for a premise for a novel, and I'm just crazy enough to try it. So I did.
Where did the premise come from?
It's a great question. So in 2022, there was an incident at a mall in Indiana. A guy went into the mall in Indiana with an assault rifle, and he started shooting, and he killed 3 people. But there was a young man in the mall at the food court having lunch in this mall in Indiana. The young man's name is Eli Dickin, and Eli Dickin was a concealed carry guy. He had his handgun with him, and he's a marksman, and he took out his gun and he shot and killed the active shooter. An armed bystander kills an active shooter. And I just thought it was fascinating. Like, first and foremost, Eli Dickin, he's a hero. I mean, he's like a real hero, bona fide hero. He did something, dangerous and heroic, and that a lot of people wouldn't be able to do, wouldn't have the courage to do. And he saved lives that day, saved his own life probably, and other people's lives, which is one thing. But at the same time, as I was looking at this whole incident, I was thinking to myself, man, is that the way it's supposed to be? Like, is that how it's supposed to be? Like, you go to the mall to buy sneakers and you need to be packing, right, to protect yourself. And so I read everything I could about this incident, and I had lots of conversations with people over the years about gun rights and gun laws and gun show loophole and all this other stuff. And I fall in the middle on gun rights. Listen, it's the right to bear arms. It's in the Constitution. It's not changing anytime soon. But at the same time, and listen, if you like to shoot, you like guns, that's fine. I'm cool with that. I just think, do we need so many?
Right.
That's my question.
Yeah.
Do we need so many? And do they need to be as big and as powerful as they are? And that's my where I fall on the whole thing. And so all those issues, along with this incident, this interesting concept, led me to the idea of like, this could be a novel. This could be the backdrop for a novel. And so my book opens, and this sort of all happens in the first chapter. And what I'm going to describe to you is television reporter is my protagonist. He's in Jacksonville, Florida. It's the night before the Florida-Georgia football game.
Oh,
And he's basically,
you pulled all of that in there, didn't you?
Yeah. He's filming like the pregame the night before. But he's at a waterfront retail complex. And if you're from Jacksonville, it's modeled in my brain after the landing, but the landing's gone now. You probably know that. And but in my head, I was picturing the Jacksonville landing, and guy comes in with an assault rifle, and he's killed by an armed bystander. Television reporter flips his camera around and gets the whole thing on camera, and the video goes viral, and the bystander is immediately a Second Amendment hero, and the television reporter is now a superstar. But all is not as it seems, Spencer. All is not as it seems.
Did you get a chance to talk to Eli Dicken before you wrote this?
I have not. I've never spoken to him. Never met him. I had actually someone else asked me that same question not too long ago. Have I ever spoken to him? And the answer is I have not.
And at the landing, there actually was
you're absolutely correct. Yeah. You're 100% correct. It was at a video game tournament, and there was an active shooter incident that happened there. And that may have been a subconscious thing for me. I don't know. You're very perceptive. You're the first person who's made that connection. The reason I chose that is, number one is, they say write about what you know, and I've been to that game many times, and I've been to the party the night before many times. And at the same time, I didn't want to, I'm from Miami. I didn't want to write a Miami book. I wanted the freedom of being able to write about something that I've been to Jacksonville a bunch of times, but I don't know it like the back of my hand or anything. So I know where everything generally is, but I didn't want to be tied to, my character goes from one side of town to the other side of town, and it's too quick or too slow, or there's way more traffic on that road than you think, or, I just wanted to, to me, it's more of like a fictionalized version of Jacksonville.
I hope you made the, and I have to admit, I haven't finished the book, but I hope you made the bad guy Georgia Bulldog fan.
You'll have to read the book to understand.
I have to say though, I'm drawn to some of the comparisons. It's of two works of art, and one would be Deep Impact, the role of Tia Leone,
right,
and how she kind of accidentally becomes the voice for the last days of doom, and that because she just happened to be in the right place, and it's not that dissimilar to In Cold Blood.
Yeah, interesting. That's a flattering comparison. Deeply flattering comparison. So,
how has the reception been for the book? Obviously, you won awards.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm hustling, man. I'm hustling to find a readership as much as I can. It's a challenge. But I've been fortunate that, I've won some awards, which has been great. And, to get that kind of critical acclaim, as it were. And, the reviews have been good. And, my publisher hasn't called me and told me to stop writing or anything like that. So I guess the sales are whatever in the lane. Times are a little bit different now, I think, and that one of the strategies. So my publisher is what they would term digital first. So you can order my book, The Bystander, at your local Barnes and Noble or your local bookshop. They can get a copy of it for you, but it's the publishing company doesn't like actively put them on the shelves. So I can tell you right now, it's not on the shelf at your local Barnes and Noble.
Yeah, but they can
Um,
get it by
but
ordering,
they can
right?
get it, right? And so the strategy, my publisher's strategy is they like a series. And so the first thing that they said to me was, "We like your book, but we really want to see it turned into a series. And what do you think about that?" And so I said, "That sounds super intimidating, but I'll try." And so I signed a deal to write 3 books, and I've finished the second one. The second one actually comes out in May of 2026, and then I'm working furiously to finish the first draft of the third book.
And what is the name of the series?
So it's called the LeMaster Files. The protagonist is a television reporter named Pete LeMaster, and so the series is called the LeMaster Files.
I like it. And are they all based in Jacksonville?
So yeah, I can say that with confidence. Yeah. So the first the setting, the first book is set in Jacksonville. The second book is set in Jacksonville, but things happen in other places. So that's not stationary. So in my first book, there's some stuff that happens in New York. In the second book, there's some stuff that happens in Singapore, of all places. And then the third book, I'm working on some things that are happening in kind of more rural parts of Florida. So it moves around a little bit. Change of scenery is good for a novel.
You enjoying this more so than the PR and consulting?
I don't know. I mean, I'm hustling. I'm making about 30 cents an hour right now, so I'm not sure I'm enjoying it. But it's a great challenge. It's a lot of fun. It's very interesting. I've met some really nice people. It's very obviously really flattering. I mean, I did an event a few weeks back, and set up a table and put my books out, and people are walking by, and this lady walks by and she looks at my book and she like goes, "Oh, I read that. That's good. I like that. That's a good book." And I was like, "Wait a sec, what? You actually read my book? You read
Yeah.
how can?" And I honestly was trying to ask her a couple of poignant questions to make sure she wasn't just, blowing smoke at me. He really did. And she knew, she had read the book, and she said she's an English teacher or something, and one of her students read it and gave it to her. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. So,
well, John, one of the things that I just find very interesting is that you wrote a book that's entitled The Bystander. Obviously, some of that has to be you in there. But at the same time, then you stepped out and actually wrote and published the book.
Yeah, no, right. I'm not standing by, right? I'm engaged. I guess is what you're getting at. Yeah. And the title's a little bit of the title, the meaning of the title changes as you read the book. So just so you know, it's pretty clear. And I think folks in the beginning think they know what the title means, and then it kind of changes as time goes by, which is why one of the reasons I liked it.
Any plans for doing the audio version of it?
The audio rights were sold to Tantor Audio, and so the audiobook for the Bystander comes in April 25th, I think. April 25th, the audiobook drops wherever audiobooks are sold. And then the second book in my series is called The Pawn, and The Pawn, that one is the audiobook is going to release concurrently. So that's May 13th. So the audio is there. So I did, the audio rights were sold for all 3 books of the series.
Yeah. So you won't do it yourself. Someone else will.
Oh, no. I mean, it's, I don't think I would be good at it. I'm too much of an stammerer kind of a guy. I don't have that voice. You got the voice, man. You could do it.
Well, the Lifestrengthstore, we do audios as well. So.
Oh, there you go. There you go. They didn't. Number one, they didn't ask me. So that's just so you know, it wasn't like I turned it down. They didn't ask me. They did share with me. Like, here's the one person we were considering, and I didn't love it. And so my publisher said, well, listen, if you want to suggest somebody else, go onto the Tantor Audio site and listen to their narrators and people that they use regularly. And if you like somebody else better, suggest that.
Yeah.
And so I did. I went and I listened to about, 30 different audiobook narrators, and I gave them a list of 3, and they picked the one that I gave them as my top choice. So I felt heard.
Our guest is John David, author, debut fictional author. In the time that we have left, John, I'd be remiss if I didn't come back to the crisis consulting. What are some of the things that we need to be doing right now to protect ourselves and, more importantly, probably our children online?
The first one is that you need to just be aware that you have an online footprint, and that you don't have a choice anymore about that. So a lot when I wrote my book about this, a lot of folks would say, "Well, I don't worry about that. I'm not online." I'm like going, "Okay, guess what? You are."
You
And
are.
it's kind of
Yeah.
like what I would describe to them is like, listen, if you've ever there's the records of your voting, that you voted or not is online. If you made a political donation, it's online. If you bought a house, it's online. Your phone number is probably somewhere online. All those things are out there, and so you can't pretend as though it does. You don't have an online reputation, because you do. And so the best move, the simplest thing, is try to control that yourself. And so simple things, have a LinkedIn page if you're in business, even if it's kind of sitting there doing nothing, but it's put your picture on there, put your website on there, load it up on LinkedIn. So if somebody searches for you and they're looking for you, they're going to find you, versus if there's nothing up there and they go searching, and then then you don't want them to go unearth, that night that went off the rails when you were in college, right? You don't want that story, them to find that. You want them to find you, right?
Controlling the narrative, huh?
That's probably the first most important thing.
Yeah.
And with kids, I think kids have gotten a lot better at it. Like I think they've grown up, and like my kids are in their 20s, and they've grown up with all this stuff, and also me harping on about this stuff. So they don't communicate as much, in public. So they'll communicate with their friends in like a group chat, but they know that they got to behave themselves, but they also know that they're not speaking to the whole world when they're in that private group chat. So there's things that the kids have adapted, right? So that's good. And then but then it's also just the same old, really simple things. It's like, don't say anything online that you wouldn't say to somebody's face, right? I mean, don't be a troll, don't be a dirtbag online, and treat people the way you expect to be treated yourself, online, offline, whatever. Those are probably my main tips.
Should we all kind of audit ourselves, or do a search? I'm afraid to do it.
Yeah, I think you should. I mean, I think you should. It's just to see what's out there. I mean, you're not going to be able to make things go away, but at the same time, like I said, I often have told, if you type the name of your company into Google, can somebody get to, in like 2 or 3 clicks, get your phone number, meaning your business number? Or are you making them hunt? You making them look like you're making it, because either on purpose or accidentally, right? Simple things like that. And then, and if there is something that you don't like, you can add stuff in that you do like. There's no reason why you shouldn't have like I said, if you're in business, a LinkedIn account. There's no reason why you can't have an X account or a Blue Sky account or whatever. And you don't have to post your innermost thoughts. You don't have to post your pictures of you doing Tai Chi on the beach. You can just post a little bit, and you can start to fill in the gaps, so that when people search for you, they find you, right? Because that's ultimately what we want. They want you want to be found as you, because the alternative is that it's like, the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. You remember the dinosaurs found a way, right? They thought they had made it so they couldn't reproduce, and guess what? Nature finds a way, chaos theory finds a way, whatever it is. The internet's the same thing. If you try to control it, it's going to work its way around you. The best thing that you can do is give enough information that you're content putting out there, and and then you'll have a better handle on how you're perceived and how people see you.
Almost flooding the zone.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Well, John, how do people, let's go to both books. How do they get in touch with you? How do they get a copy of How to Protect or Destroy Your Reputation Online, your seminal book, and then the debut thriller Bystander?
Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate the opportunity to make the plug. My books are available, everywhere books are sold online. So if you go, on Amazon or barnesandnoble.com, there's also, I'm a big fan of a site called bookshop.org. I don't know if you know anything about bookshop.org, but it's a great place to go buy a hard copy. And what happens is when you go in to buy a book at bookshop.org, is it'll ask you what your local bookstore is, and then a portion of the sale goes to your local bookstore. So if you want to buy a hard copy and you want to support your local bookstore, you can still do that, online, but they get a piece of the action, which I think is great. My website is byjohndavid.com, and it has my events and my news and all that kind of stuff and background on me and my books. I'm also on Instagram at byjohndavid. And I'm given what I do, you can imagine that I'm okay with being contacted online. I'm pretty easy to find online, and I think I've done a pretty good job of flooding the zone with my stuff. So I'm content. I'm content with the results on the page.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Tonight, our guest has been John David. John, thank you so much. And I make a promise to you. I'm going to finish the book. And I would love for you to come back, be a friend of the show, especially as you roll out more books in the series.
That would be great. I would love it. I'll hold you to it.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.